Welcome back to Badass Woman 50 Plus. We are a pro-age show designed to take the fear out of aging. As a woman of 85, most everyone is junior to me. Think of me as grandma, and I will think of you as my children. I am Robin Lane, psychotherapist, director, producer.
I am Natalie H. Rogers, MSW, CSW, age mysterious lady, actress, psychotherapist, tango dancer, author of Talk Power, The Mind-Body Way to Speak Without Fear, published in 12 languages, and founder of Talk Power, a Stutter No More program, and Talk Power, Panic Clinic for public speaking workshops.
Badass Woman 50 Plus is a serious talk show, but as we also like to entertain, some of our visuals are off the wall. A badass woman is true to her better self, big on integrity, values hard work, and personal growth is her mainstay. A fully functioning badass scares off many lesser dudes because she's the most righteous and smartest woman in any room. And we all have some badass in us, and our mission, children, is to guide in the strengthening of those badass muscles. Today's focus will be on the hard work it takes to reinvent yourself. Now, whether reinvention is due to a personal loss or a professional change of circumstances, or simply a desire to expand your horizons through our personal stories, those of our accomplished guests, and our knowledge of the psyche, we will be like white on rice on this.
Reinvention. Remember that word. Reinvention is about leveraging the past, its successes and failures with the lessons learned. Self-reinvention after the age of 50 seems risky, like you're throwing away a lifetime of experience. Staying at a job you do not like is a risk. Retiring and doing nothing is a risk. A bad relationship is a risk. There are always risks to take. But reinventing yourself and taking on new challenges results in growth. At 50, one has lots of experience. We've been around the block a few times and been through changes. There's also no question that as we age, a sense of doubt kind of creeps in.
Well, self-doubt can occur with any major shift in life, no matter the age. In 1967, at age 33, I was widowed, filled with doubt, fear, and sorrow. The loss of a beloved is painful enough, but there were other changes which included financial adjustments and the loss of social connections. I felt like I was disappearing. My unmarried friends could barely fathom my lack of resilience, and the married women we'd know now viewed me as a threat. At night, as crazy as this might sound, I would put on my dead husband's shoes, sizes too big for me, and clump around the house, and that was the only thing that soothed me. It was the late 60s, and the anti-war movement was heating up. I threw myself into political activism with passion, and in time made new friends and found new meaning. My enthusiasm for performing had waned and was replaced with the desire to produce. Now, perhaps the loss of control over my personal circumstances led me to want more control over my career, or maybe I just liked bossing people around. Finally, the ability to adapt to change, a trait needed for reinvention, was mine. I would call on this resilience countless times in the years ahead. Children, for reinvention, you need to be able to bounce back. Resilience is essential.
Well, Robin, it was much different for me. My first reinvention was a breeze. I experienced no self-doubt, not because I was young. It's always been that way. That's how I am. At 18, because of my looks, the manager of the music department where I was employed demonstrating exercise machines said he had a band in a bar and asked if I would like to audition. I jumped at it. I was always dreaming of reinventing my life to have a more exciting one than the ones I'd seen in my neighborhood. I dressed in a tight, sparkly, low-cut number and went to the club where, to my eyes, his three-piece band looked as good as a symphony orchestra. I knew just one song, Embraceable You, and I sang my heart out using gestures I'd seen in the movies. I nailed it. Next thing I know, I'm getting a musician's union card and singing at weddings and bar mitzvahs. I knew that to earn my living singing, I'd have to up my skills. So I spent every moment I could taking singing lessons, learning all the songs of the day, and practicing scales until it drove everyone within distance insane. Determined to make my dreams come true, I labored until my voice and my performance were musical and professional. Before long, I was earning my living as a singer. That was the first of many, many reinventions ahead.
Self-reinvention does require discipline because you've got to master new skills, but another must is being able to cope with uncertainty. Now, many women stay at jobs and in relationships that are deeply disappointing because of habit and routine. Psychologically, predictability makes us feel a sense of purpose. Change is the opposite.
Right. You know, it takes at least 2 to 8 months to adjust to leaving behind what's been a part of your identity. So, out there, anyone intent on taking a new path must take the time to become adjusted to leaving the familiar behind and going about getting their support system in place. Create a plan by listing all of your options, write them down and put it on your refrigerator. Reach out, make new connections, reacquaint with old ones. Talk to people who have made similar changes to get the real perspective on what could be in store.
Performing since the age of 15, the entertainment industry had been my world. In 1976, at age 42, I said adieu and went back to school to study psychology. Now, my classmates were a decade or more younger, and other than our studies, we had little in common. At times, it felt like I was in a rowboat, lost in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. But it was around this time that I had started resistance training, and back then there were only a handful of women in weightlifting gyms. Now, like me, they were all oddballs. So we quickly related, and suddenly I had a new support group. When it comes to self-reinvention, leaving behind what is familiar and comforting is hard, and was hard for me to do. But having the security of a coterie of like-minded women meant the world to me. I needed others to rely on, and fortunately for me, I found them. Now, unlike analytic training, where I had to do what the institution required, getting involved with an activity that was of my own choosing, the statistical odds of my finding like-minded friends were very much in my favor. Life lesson learned.
Robin, let's say you've changed your job or you've divorced or something has happened, you've relocated, and your familiar support system is not there anymore. You need to socially reinvent yourself. An easy way to do that is through Meetup. Meetup is an online international service used to create groups that host in-person events. WeWork owns Meetup, so many discussion groups are held in their inviting spaces. There are tons in New York. You can join as many groups as you have time for.
I love Meetup. I've attended many different groups, numbers of times. Any interest anyone's got, intellectual, athletic, cultural, culinary, literary, skydiving, political, or just plain social, there's a Meetup. With Meetup, one never has to be lonely in New York City. Social reinvention and networking made easy.
My networking skills led to my next big reinvention. After many years of singing in countless cities and countries, I had it with touring. I decided to try acting, figuring it would at least keep me in one place. Off-Broadway was hot, and I got the first part I tried out for, and it was the lead. This is easy, I thought. Then, I got fired. I didn't have the skills that were required of a professional actress. I knew I could do it. I started to actively network. Fast forward, and I am cast in what then was considered a soft porn film, and today would get an R rating. The movie wound up in the Cannes Film Festival, favorably reviewed by the New York Times and the Post. And my name, Natalie Rogers, was up in lights at a cinema in Times Square. A second self-reinvention.
You're 50 plus, and you want to reinvent yourself professionally. You've acquired new skills.
Yeah.
And you need to know where to look for this new job. You start with companies whose customer base is older people. Look for smaller companies. They have fewer applicants, less competition. Go to LinkedIn and search by company size. Target smaller companies that don't have a recruiter or money for job postings. If you're applying for a job that appeals to you, but it pays less than your last, be upfront. If you're willing to take a pay cut, say that. If you are switching industries, say you understand you may have to work your way up.
One of the keys to getting hired is getting to the front of the line. When a job is posted, they may have as many as 200 applicants. Say 10 reach out directly to the hiring manager. Now they will likely get their application reviewed. Finding the hiring manager is not as hard as you would think. With a little research through Google and LinkedIn, you probably can find the company directory and the name of the person you're looking for.
In the late 90s, simply wanting to expand my social network turned into a reinvention. Happily living in sin for a decade and having established a successful psychoanalytic practice, I knew that joining a group that shared my interests was the way to go. I researched. The Chaîne des Rôtisseurs was an international culinary society founded in Paris with roots dating back to 1248. Members were invited to outrageously extravagant dinners and galas, which surprisingly weren't as expensive as they looked. After spending so many years putting my nose to the grindstone, this meant dress up and party time, just what my vanity was longing for. Now, everyone seemed to know everything about haute cuisine and fine wine, and maybe they were drunk half the time, but no one seemed to have any mental problems, at least none that showed. Now, though I knew nothing about wines, as pot had been my high of choice, I figured that if I wrote a column for their international magazine, members would know I existed. How hard could that be? This opened the doors to a lot of research on wines, which led to a level of travel that I never knew existed. All I had to do was contact whoever wrote a column like mine in any city in the world that had a Chaîne chapter. And when I got there, the red carpet was laid out. I was the guest of honor all over the world, from New Orleans to Istanbul. Children, for any kind of successful renewal, you have to be flexible and willing to take on a new role. Now, this is generally accompanied by a lot of anxiety, because in the beginning, you really don't know what you're doing. Be prepared to fail that as you forge ahead.
As for me, due to my social networking skills, I knew tons of theater people. I was still longing to act on the stage, so I convinced a playwright I met to let me produce and star in some of his work. I rented a tiny theater for 2 weeks, the Playbox, cast the play, and found a director. My life was about to change once more. The director, Harold Herbstman, ultimately became the love of my life and my husband. Together, we formed the Dove Theater Company, one of the most successful not-for-profit theaters and an anti-war theater of the day. He also helped in my development as a highly skilled actress. I say helped because my capacity for hard work, risk-taking, and willingness to learn played an equal part. You know, lots of people have innate ability, but developing it to a professional level takes the badass attitude of letting nothing stop you from pursuing your goals.
To quote the Huffington Post, Our guest is the inspirational Linda Langton of Langton's International Agency. It's a boutique literary agency that specializes in helping authors sell their book. Her career path has spanned the globe. Welcome, Linda. We are delighted to have you here on Badass Women 50 Plus.
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here.
Linda, the theme of our program today is self-reinvention. Now, you emigrated from England to Australia, and you founded a very, very successful business. Then, of all things, you moved to New York, and you created a very successful literary agency. So you were so successful. What do you attribute all of this success to?
Well, I think originally it probably has to do with my upbringing. I had a very inspirational family. My father ended up being Lord Mayor of Manchester. He really cared about people, and so he just after the war he decided that he wanted to make the world a better place. So he became a councillor in the local government to help people go from what was really a very poor district with 2 up, 2 down, with the toilets and everything were in the back, to make this a much better place for people. So he did he did some wonderful things, and he grew in stature and became an alderman and then Lord Mayor of Manchester.
So he was your inspiration?
And he was my inspiration, yes, and to help people and to be inspiring. He really was inspiring.
He sounds like an absolutely marvelous man.
Well, he got the CBE for the work that he did.
What is the CBE?
Commander of the British Empire.
Oh, wow.
Yes, he was very special.
What prompted you to move to Australia in the first place?
I got married to an Australian. The marriage lasted 8 years, and he eventually joined the Trade Commissioner Service, and we went to Brussels for a year. During that period, my background actually is hotel and catering management. So I started a catering business in Australia, and then when we left, then it closed, and I then went back actually from Belgium. I came back to Australia, and then joined. I met somebody else, and we started another business.
Oh, and what was that?
In Canberra. The business was we imported posters and greeting cards from a company called Athena. Athena stores in England at that point and in Europe was extremely successful.
What years are we talking about?
We're talking about 1969, 70.
Okay.
We decided to bring this model to Australia because everybody had new houses. It was a growing country, and there were all these walls, where people had built houses and there was nothing to put on them. So we brought the prints and posters and greeting cards over, imported them. We started a greeting card company while we were waiting. And this company was called the Inc. Group, and it ended up being a $50 million company.
$50 million?
Yes,
Wow.
in 4 countries.
And you started with how much?
And we started with $5,000.
I like that.
We sold,
I like that.
We sold a car. We sold our VW.
To start the business?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Well, this was a business for the time. It was an 80s and 90s business, and we turned something into a $50 million company in 4 countries because the timing was so good. I mean, that's what it's all about in business.
What 4 countries?
Australia, New Zealand, England, and here. We were the largest calendar company in the world at one point, and in America.
I mean, it sounds like you had an absolutely brilliant company there, but what happened that you left it and you relocated to New York?
Yes, well, it was a wonderful journey, and as all journeys, they do come to an end, and this one did come to a rather an abrupt end, unfortunately. We had a hostile takeover, and for me, I was sick at the time. I was ill, and so for me, it was just an ending. And so I was able to walk away and come to live my dream, which was always to live in New York. But that's what happened, and I didn't come with all the money that it should have generated, and I came here with very little and started all over again.
So getting back to the theme of our show, which is about reinvention,
Yes.
all of these different businesses were really startup businesses. So what would you say is the most important element that one has to have to do a startup business?
Well, I think a positive attitude, and my attitude is you just have to keep dancing. I mean, you just have to keep moving, and you just don't stop just because you have a setback, which was a major setback because I expected to be a multimillionaire and I wasn't.
But you were for a time, on paper.
Oh, no, I was definitely
paper.
on that period of my life. I was, but then we lost it all.
Yes.
So I came here with virtually nothing. And I had just got over cancer, so I was starting all over again with my health. And I came here, I didn't know anyone. But this was my dream.
You knew no one.
No, I didn't know anybody in New York.
You're a badass. I mean, that is the quintessential badass.
No, I didn't know a soul in New York.
Tell us about your literary agency.
Okay, so I came here and I had to work. Unfortunately, I was hoping not to have to work, but I would have worked anyway because that's who I am. But so well, it was very serendipitous. One of my clients, who was a wonderful photographer, was looking for an agent. And I didn't know what an agent was at that point, but he said to me, "Would you like to be my agent, seeing you're in New York?" I said, "Okay, I'll do that." And so he said, "Well, I'll send you my book." It was beautiful photography. And I said, "Okay, now what do I do?" So I rang up the various publishing companies to find out who actually does photography publishing. And I didn't know who to ask for, so I'd asked the switch, and I think I have a secret weapon, which is my English accent. Because the switch, who shouldn't normally do that and wouldn't normally, I said, "Who do I speak to for photography publishing?" And they actually found me the person. And so that's how I started, and people heard from, I don't know how they did, but eventually I started to get a nice little portfolio of books around, and that's how I got started, from nothing really, and knew nobody in the industry.
How long did that take?
Yeah, that's what I wanted to know.
Well, I've been doing it for 17, 18 years now.
But how long did it take before you actually could see some
Well,
kind
it
of
took me
income
about 4 years, 5 years.
of struggle?
Yes,
Yeah.
terrible struggle, yes. I mean, yes, it was all money going out and no money coming in, and I really didn't have very much money, and it was very, very tough, yes.
And your clients, you get clients how?
Oh, well, I've got a very good, well, if I say so myself, I've got a pretty good reputation now, so people are always wanting me to be their agent. But when I first started, nobody knew who I was. But I was very fortunate. I happened to be at a party, and I can't remember how I got there, but I met Mrs. Pataki's chief of staff, and she heard that I was a literary agent. I was chatting to her, and she said, "Oh, Mrs. Pataki wants to do a children's book." So I said, "Oh, well, I'll help her."
You're talking about the governor's wife?
Yes.
Right.
Yes. And she said it's an illustrated book. So I thought, well, all my whole life I've been doing illustrated work. This is just down my alley, although I knew nothing about illustrated books, of course. So I said, yes, I'll help, of course. So anyway, I looked up, in those days you didn't have online so much. It was the beginning of the turn of the century. And so I looked up, I don't remember where I looked up, but it was probably in the telephone book or something, to look up, top illustrators, and I found a fantastic illustrator and sat with her. I talked to Mrs. Pataki what she was looking for, and together I put together a really beautiful book, I thought, and it was going to be, because of my brain, not just this lovely little, it was a young children's book, a young girl and a dog, Madison and New Yorkie, and a Yorkie, Madison and Yorkie. It was going to be Madison in New York.
Like the Eloise.
Yes, and I was going to take her to LA, I was going to take her to London, I was going to take her all over
With
the
her
world.
dog.
Madison with the dog, which I thought was a very good idea. It would have been absolutely fantastic. We sold 5,000 copies of the book in a month, which is absolutely fantastic.
Linda, as someone who has traveled and lived in so many different places and reinvented yourself repeatedly, what would you advise our viewer, our 50-plus woman, if they need to reinvent themselves?
Well, I think the first thing I would say is that you have to understand that within yourself you have inner strength, and you have to call upon your inner strength when the chips are down, and I can tell you the chips have been down quite a lot for me because I didn't know anybody here. I mean, it was a dream, and you have to live your dream, and that I believe in absolutely. And when you actually start living your dream, it's not like you think it's going to be. At least mine wasn't. It was tough. And somehow you just have to keep dancing. And that is my mantra. You have to keep dancing. And it's not easy. And that is what I would say to our viewers. It doesn't matter what age you are. And I came here, I was over 50, to come to New York at that age. I've wanted to since I was 12 years old. And I felt that, you know, I had to do what I had to do that when I lie on my deathbed. I have to say I did it all, right? I've done it all now. Not that I'm going to die, but, you know. And I think that's what you have to do. You have to really live, have to do everything you really want to do in this life. We've only got one. And when the chips are down, you just have to say to yourself, right, dust yourself off and keep going. That's my mantra. And if I ever write a book, it's going to be called You Just Gotta Keep Dancing.
That's your secret to reinvention, that and your British accent.
Oh, the British accent, yes, of course.
Linda, thank you so much for being our guest on Badass Women 50 Plus, because you exemplify it.
Oh,
thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Robin. Thank
The
you,
poster
Natalie.
girl for reinvention.
Thank you, and thank you, everybody.
Thank you. You so
Thank
enhanced
you.
our show.
Thank you.
Okay. You know, Natalie, we really haven't touched on the aspect of reinvention after divorce. When children are involved and there is the issue of dating, it's less troubling, of course, when children are grown and living elsewhere, but as most divorcees discover, it's always complicated, just more so with younger kids. In addition to discovering the time that it takes for you to come through the adjustment period, there is the family's new norm to cope with.
You know, it's best not to go this alone. That's where the guidance of a therapist, a minister, or a life coach whose job it is to understand the transition is valuable. They will really help you to not obsess on the mistakes your ex made. Most children of divorce harbor the fantasy that eventually their parents will get back together. Dating too quickly can smash this dream, forcing them to prematurely cope with yet another disappointment. Understand this, and you'll realize that it's best to keep mum about going out until enough time has passed and you see that they have adapted to this new way of living.
Let's close by agreeing that when all is said and done, getting your ducks mentally and professionally in order makes reinvention at any age an opportunity for growth and fulfillment. Look at us. I'm 85.
And I'm definitely 50 plus.
This is our first venture into TV.
I became a psychotherapist at age, get this, 43. And
We are staying badass. See you next time.